should say.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so tell me a little bit about this website. I was checking it out yesterday, and this website looks legit. I mean, there's so many standing stats, everything. Talk to us a little bit about the website.
Sure. We started it about 6 years ago. Ryan Langan started it. I was working for Patch at the time, and he asked me to help out since I was covering Attleboro and covering a lot of the local teams anyway. So I jumped on, and that coming football season, he asked me if I wanted to be managing editor. I said, sure, why not? And the site's definitely grown quite a bit, and we've changed it quite a bit over the last 6 years. And at this point now, everybody knows who we are within the league, which makes it a lot easier. And it's doing really well.
So has it been around for about 6 years? You said?
I think it's about 6. Yeah, I think that's.
Okay, so the idea about it, was it just one of you? Was it a group of you? How did it come about?
Sure. Ryan started it himself. He was working for ESPN Boston at the time, freelancing as I was as well. And the editor there, Brendan Hall, suggested, hey, no league really has a website dedicated to covering its sports, so this might be a niche that could work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I cover Bridgewater Rainham events, and of course the OCL is just BR, Barnstable, and Dartmouth, so it's really not a great conference to cover with an expansive website like this. But how much does it help to have a plethora of teams in 2 divisions to cover?
I mean, you couldn't have picked a better conference than the Hockomock. They're competitive in every sport. There's teams that are always competing for state titles. I think we had 11 state titles last year in various sports, from track to football, and teams competing in the finals and everything. So you really couldn't have asked for a better conference. I think there's probably only about 2 or 3 conferences in the state that really could have this level of coverage. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask you about this. We're not going to mention who they are, but there are several teams that may want to join the Hockomock League that have been turned down.
Sure.
Once again, we're not going to mention the schools' names, but is this kind of a regular occurrence where teams try to join the Hockomock and they get turned down often?
I don't think so. I think this was a one-time expansion for them. Adding Attleboro was a natural fit, and Milford was sort of out of the box, but it does extend the Hockomock a little out into the Central, and since Franklin is also now a Central team, according to the MIA, so it sort of gives us another team out there. I don't think they're going to expand beyond this. In fact, I think if anything, some of the smaller teams like Canton, Foxborough, might think to do what Norwood did or Dedham did and move out of a conference and try to go to a conference that's got some smaller teams. I hope not, because I enjoy covering those teams. But I think if there's anything, I don't think they're going to add more. I think it's some of the smaller teams are starting to get, those towns are really small schools. But I'm hoping that it doesn't go that way. I'm hoping that we keep the group that we have, because I think it's a good group.
All right, now speaking of that group, not to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to give you a little quiz. If you can name all of the teams in the Hockomock.
All the teams in the Hockomock? Do you want them in alphabetical order?
Oh, geez. All right, now we have a challenge here.
It's Attleboro, Canton, Foxborough, Franklin, King Philip, Mansfield, Milford, North Attleboro, Oliver Ames, Sharon, Stoughton, Taunton. I feel like I missed somebody in the middle there, but that should be everybody.
Yeah, we'll go with it. You're the expert here, so we're just now the big thing is I remember, King Philip hadn't lost a game in football in a few years. This year they lost their first game, and everyone's like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" Did you get a chance to see any of that first game for King Philip?
I did. I covered the North Attleboro game, and I actually picked North Attleboro going in. King Philip had 0 returning starters on the offensive side of the ball. Granted, they only had 2 last year, and then winning a state title again. So that wasn't an automatic. That they're going to lose, and their defense is phenomenal. But North Attleboro is a very strong team too. North Attleboro is coming off of 3 straight league championships. They went to the Super Bowl last year in D3, so it was a really tough game for both teams to start off the season. But 25-game win streak is really phenomenal in football. I mean, it's almost like they needed to lose so we could put it in perspective as to just how impressive that is to go 2 seasons undefeated, especially they played Mansfield, I think, 3 or 4 times in that span, and they played North Attleboro twice, and they play a really tough schedule, and to win 25 straight games is really an incredible achievement. And they started a new one last night because they beat Foxborough, so maybe a new win streak is on the cards.
Yeah, do you see King Philip making another postseason run this year as well? I mean, I know you said they lost pretty much all their offensive starters, but do you think when they had their depth from the past couple of years, do you think they're good enough to make another deep playoff push?
I think they have the type of defense that can keep them in every single game. They are loaded on defense. Jack Webster and Max Armour are two of the best linebackers in the league, and they'll manage. They'll find a way, and they've played so many close games during that run that they just seem to find a way. And if Ryan Halladay can develop into a star running back, which he looks like he can, they definitely have a shot. I mean, I think Mansfield's probably the team to beat in the league, but KP is definitely a contender again.
Yeah, when I saw last night that Mansfield was hanging in there with Everett in the early part of the game, I was, oh, wow, this Mansfield team is legit. Last year, they almost went to King Philip and defeated them on the road. And I remember when I was covering the tournament there for Bridgewater Raynham, I said, oh, we may be able to host a Division II South Sectional here. But then it's like, wait a minute, you still have to beat a Mansfield team that went on the road to beat King Philip. But then we saw that, Everett, one of the best teams in the country started, playing their offense. But is there a surprise team in the Hockomock League for football that maybe could raise some eyebrows and maybe knock off some people?
I think the team that I saw last night, I think Franklin is a team that has some potential. I still wonder whether or not they can match up against teams like Attleboro and KP and Mansfield in the league that have a lot more size on the line. But they've got some real talented skill position players. They play the spread really well. So I was really impressed with them last night, and I think that they could cause some problems. I mean, they took Mansfield down to the wire last year in the league, and I think that there's potential for it again next Friday because that's Mansfield will be against Franklin. I think that could be a really interesting matchup.
All right, now for the website, talk to me a little bit about the podcast that you have. You cover the game of the week.
Sure.
So let's get going on the podcast. Who's on it, and talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, Ryan doesn't. He's not really much for the radio/TV spots, so it ends up being me, which is okay because I have a background in it anyway, so it works. But I'm joined by Matt Bosch, who's a former assistant coach at Attleboro High. He was also their baseball coach up until this coming spring. And this year we've decided to add some of the coaches. So we pick our game of the week. Now we announced the game of the week on Tuesday. We sort of know who it is as we're coming into the week. But so as soon as we have it decided, we call up the coaches. So I'm joined by them and probably some players as the season goes on as well. And just trying to add a new dimension to the site, something different.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I've seen any conference ever do that with the extensive coverage that you do of the Hockomock. And it's awesome to see, Don tries his best to try to get the entire southeastern Massachusetts involved. And, he runs around like, a chicken with his head cut off, especially a lot of times. Lucy knows when you go on the show with Dom, it's out of nowhere. He's like, all right, let's do our top 20 right now. And you go, okay, I wasn't quite prepared for this. But, going back towards the Hockomock, when you said that, 11 state champions, roughly?
I think that was what it was. I'd have to look back. We tweeted it after Taunton softball won their state title because they were our last one of the year. I don't remember exactly the total, but it was around there. We, including track and wrestling and some other teams that had won state titles. Yeah, it was a very, very competitive year.
Do you know any other conferences that got anywhere close to that number in terms of state championships?
No, I can't think of anybody. I mean, I think the closest comparisons to the Hockomock League would be the Bay State Conference. That's pretty much the closest comparison. I think maybe the DCL, the Dual County League, would Concord Carlisle and Lincoln Sudbury, teams like that. But no, they would be the ones if they came that close. But I don't even know if they were that successful.
Yeah, I know we had the head coach of Taunton softball. The name's eluding me right now at the moment. Yeah, Dave Lurie. We had him on the phone, and we had some great conversation with him. Asked him about how do you handle adversity, so on and so forth. And he said if he knew the answer to that, he'd write a book and make a lot of money. So for you, when you cover these sports, now do you cover all the sports here, or as much as you possibly can for Hockomock, or do you have a specialty? Or?
No, we cover as many as we can. Obviously, some of the sports, indoor track, for instance, up at the Reggie Lewis Center in Boston, that's kind of hard to get to at 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. So, but we try to get to their championship meet if we can, just to get some photos and coverage of that. But yeah, we try to cover as many.
So when you're covering these sports, do you find yourself to be a coach sometimes, where you sit there and you go, no, you shouldn't have done that to certain players?
But I'm also a sports fan, so I do that when I'm watching, teams at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So, would you like to be able to see the Hockomock? I know you said you don't want to see them expand, but would you like to see them get more coverage in terms of radio, television? I know you guys do an excellent job on the website and get the podcast. Would you like to see them more on television side so people actually can see them?
Well, surprisingly, the Hockomock does pretty well in terms of television coverage because almost all have they almost all have cable access stations that are covering them on a regular basis. Attleboro, obviously, we're here at WCS,
Yeah.
and I was here when they started that coverage. And Foxborough's for a long time. Foxborough's done a great job with covering the sports. I think Sharon covers every single game, every single home game of every sport.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, they're always out there covering stuff. Easton Cable's out doing all of our games a lot. So, actually they do pretty well when it comes to that. I think one thing that I wish the Hockomock got more of was a little more respect from some of the Globe and the Herald.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
They do occasionally, but it takes a title run to get that type of that respect. But I understand that too. They've got their own.
No, absolutely. I know. I don't know. You may or may not know this off the top of your head, but the last time I know Fox 25 tries to do a game of the week, and they bring some. Do you know the last time that Fox 25 came down for a Hockomock game?
Probably Mansfield KP. I think last year they came down for that one, but they do come down every once in a while. It's just that seems to be sort of the edge. Every once in a while Mansfield, that's sort of like the edge of the Boston coverage, and then but they all have their own papers as well, so they get plenty of coverage, but nothing quite like what we're able to do.
Yeah, the only reason why I asked that is I know last year when I went to go cover the BR-KP game, there was no one there from Grantham, and all right, maybe they just don't like to cover King Philip. They just, you're on your second title run here. And I remember when BTV, we got there and we were setting up our stuff, and we're like, oh, okay, no one's played around here. There's a lot of, I think Greg Dudek was there from the Herald or Globe or whoever he writes for, and there's other people there. All right, so that's why I kind of asked you about that TV question, but that's good to know that all the other high schools in the Hockomock League do that excellent coverage.
Yeah, quite a few of them. Milford's another one off the top of my head. Milford TV does quite a bit with them as well. So there's a lot of they're doing a good job. There's a lot of coverage there.
All right, so we're going to take a break here. We're going to pay some bills. So on the other side of the break, we're going to talk a little bit more Hockomock sports. You're listening to 4 Deep Sports Talk on the news station, 1320 AM, WARA.
Today's 4 Deep Sports Talk broadcast is sponsored by Frank Bedeck Law Office. Visit them at bedecklaw.com. By Dr. Scott J. Mandel. Visit them at superiorortho.com. And by Source Pumping Incorporated. Simply the best at what they do. Visit them at sourcepumping.com.
Hey, welcome back. You are listening to 4 Deep Sports Talk here on the news station, 1320 AM WARA, and online, all one word, 4deepsportstalk.com. This week we are highlighting Josh Perry. He is one of the many brains behind the Hockomock Sports, who does a great job, and I thought Brian Barad did a great job. He went right at him, drilled him, and Josh took the sweat like a champ, and that was round one. But in studio, of course, we have Lucy Cabral, Alex Mayo. Someone that's going to work with us this winter when we cover the Bristol Plymouth and the BR games on 4 Deep Sports Talk on the Facebook is Christian Bracero. Christian's in studio. Hey, turn that mic over so they can hear you. There you go.
Oh, yeah. I'm proud to be here. I'm honored to be here. Josh, you answered some pretty good questions. As we all know, it's Grizzly season.
I got to mention the Sports Master before anything. And then Big Max is in the corner. He's just observing, checking it out. He will be starting an internship with us on Wednesday over at Bridgewater Access TV doing the editing. He wants to learn the editing, so we'll be doing that. And then hopefully in January, he will be with us starting an internship with BCC doing video graphics.
Really?
Yeah, we talked to Nicole, so he'll start the spring program in January. And if he changes his degree and he wants to do communications, Lucy will throw him right in the fire like we did all the other guys.
Absolutely.
And he'll be fine. But why don't we go to you? I know you had a couple questions for him, Christian.
Oh, yeah,
Just keep the mic close to you because we have to set the pitch tone.
Educate me, Josh.
So turn the mic over. Turn the mic right in front of you. There you go.
All right. So educate me. So what goes into expanding the league? I know you mentioned that you really don't have any hopes for expanding the league,
Right.
but what would go into the decision-making process of adding teams in there if you were to expand it?
Well, when they first made the expansion, it was because they had 9 teams. So it was sort of an uneven league, and the way the leagues have been going, they've been really doing this get up to 12, split into 2 divisions. It's big schools, small schools, typically how it goes. So they wanted to expand that way. Attleboro was a natural fit for them, so that was their 10th team, which put them right on the edge of being able to split into 2 divisions. And then Taunton has been a longtime rival of Attleboro's, going back 50, 60 years. And back when they used to play basketball at the Armory here in Attleboro. So that was a natural rival. They also played North Attleboro all the time. They played Mansfield. So Taunton also made sense for them. So when they decided that Attleboro and Taunton were the 2 teams that were going to come in, well, that gave them an uneven number again. And then it came down to Milford and a couple of teams again that we won't name, but we all know who they are. So they decided to go with Milford on that one because they didn't want another school that was the size of a Franklin or an Attleboro. They wanted another school that was more comparable to like Sharon, Stoughton, something like that. So they brought in Milford, and I think at this point now with 12 teams, 2 divisions, I think they're pretty well set. Whether they expand or not, I mean, I just don't want them to drop any of their teams because I like the teams that we're covering. But I don't see them having any plans to expand any further. I think they're pretty content with 12.
Now, as I was trying to mention earlier, I like to use the term grizzly season. This is when like all the sports fans kind of go in their caves and you have all the major sports. I mean, throughout the summer, you get mostly baseball, women's NBA, right? But now we're entering the basketball season, we're entering football season, and hockey is like the busiest time of the year, in my opinion, in sports. For those sports fans, I like to go in their caves and stuff, but want to actually get out of the caves for once and check out a game. What big game in your mind that you can think of in the Hockomock League would you recommend the fans to go out and see?
This coming week, or
It could be this season, but any big
I mean,
games coming up in next upcoming weeks? That you
yeah, I
think
mean,
of?
I think that really anytime you can get a KP Mansfield game in the Kelly Rex, that's a pretty big one to start off. I actually think I mentioned earlier Franklin Mansfield next week is going to be a good one to come out and see. North Attleboro Foxborough is a perennial major game in the Hockomock League. These are 2 teams that have been at the top of the league for 40 some odd years now, and they're dominant powers every year. So I think that's always a big game if you can get out to see that as well. And not to there's some pretty big soccer games and field hockey games if you're into that as well. Canton Foxborough field hockey is always a good one. KP Franklin. So this is a busy time of the year, and we've got a lot of really good teams. So I think if teams Mansfield KP girls soccer is another one that comes to mind right away. I mean, I think there's some big games that are coming up that people would be really interested in.
And how about those that really want to stay up to date with what's going on in football or field hockey or soccer and for boys and girls? Who want to keep up to date, other than the website alone, are y'all on social media? Who can they rely on to make sure everything is up to date for their own knowledge and in all the leagues?
Yeah, we're definitely on social media. You can find us on Facebook, and apparently we're on Instagram. I'm not really in charge of the Instagram account, but I hear we're on Instagram, and of course on Twitter at Hockomock Sports, which is the main resource I think for people, and it's been really popular, and we're almost at 9,000 followers. So certainly the league is taken to it, and that's a great resource. You can always go there and find the latest content, but obviously if you're on social media, head to the website too, because there's always stuff that you miss. We also have a newsletter that we started this year, so people can sign up for that. If you don't want to go to the site every day, we send a weekly newsletter that has all the content from the past week.
Now, is that something that is emailed to you personally, or is that just something off? Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, so you can just sign up you can register for it on the website, and then we'll send you an email every week.
I know it's early, 2 games under your belt. Can you start seeing the league change? And of course, I'm referring to football.
Sure.
Starting to change. Taunton's 2-0. North Attleboro upset King Philip. Do you think this is the year where it's time a little bit of changing of the guard, as they like to say? Could you see that slowly happening, or is it still too early?
It's hard to say because these teams like Taunton's 2-0 again this year, they were last year as well, and They have a shot at going 3-0, going against Oliver Ames, which was a barn burner last year in their first league game. It's hard to say though, because until they play Mansfield, until they play KP, and on the Davenport side, until you play North Attleboro, it's really hard to know where you're at, because those are every year. Those teams are always in the mix for the league title.
Yeah.
It just inevitably they just reload every single year. The programs from the youth on up are built to last. So changing the guard, I don't know, but there are definitely some teams that have legit possibilities of challenging for it.
Now, to change it around, we had, like Brian said, we had the Taunton girls soccer team, and I didn't get a chance. They were basing, even though they lost the North Attleboro game because of the weather, and they were 1-0, and they were hoping last Tuesday night was going to actually, they felt like they was going to actually place them how they were going to be in girls soccer in the Hockomock. And I'll tell you right now, I don't know the score of the game, but I was wondering, do you know that fight? Because right now, I mean, the standing isn't caught up yet off the website.
So they've only played one game so far.
Right, they played one.
Playing right now against they were
Oliver Ames, right?
Yes, which our schedule is incorrect on the site, but that's okay. No, they're playing Foxborough this morning. They played.
Was it Tuesday? I was just trying to see get an idea.
Yeah, the OA game I believe got moved.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think they've played it yet. It got rescheduled because they started the game. They were down 1-0, but then the lightning hit.
Oh,
so
right.
They had to stop it, and then they rescheduled it. So they're playing Foxborough, right? Well, they played Foxborough this morning. I don't know
what the final is yet.
I don't know what the final is yet. Usually Edith, the coach, tweets it out, but I haven't seen it yet. So, but I think that they're, again, much like football, it's tough because you have these perennial programs that are so good year in, year out. And you've got teams like Attleboro and Taunton in the Kelly Rex division that are trying to get to that level. And it's just so hard because you have these teams that you sort of need them to drop off for a year or two, and it just doesn't seem to happen. But I think Taunton's going to be certainly competitive. They've been competitive the last couple of years. And, there's no easy games in the league.
Not in the Hockomock.
Yeah, even when they're playing like a Mansfield, they know they're in for a battle. So.
Now, question here, and I know Brian and Christian, and I apologize, I was trying to take care of the camera, and I hope this doesn't sound repetitive, but why would the conference not want to take in a school with the same male enrollment? But, you know what I mean? I don't understand why the conference would do that. Like, they took Taunton with open arms, like you mentioned, they have a long history with Attleboro.
Right.
But you have some of these other schools that, that some of these leagues are depleting, and they're small, and they need a place to play.
Right. Well, unfortunately, when, for instance, Norwood and Dedham made the big change this year from the Bay State Conference to the Tri-Valley League, I don't know that those decisions, or I don't know that they were open to moving prior to the last 2 years.
Right.
So these decisions to expand the Hockomock came before teams like Canton and Dedham and Norwood, who would be on the same size as a Foxborough and a Canton, before they were open to it. They didn't want to unbalance the league. They don't want 7 schools that are 2,000 kid enrollments, and you got Foxborough has I think like 800 kids in the school right now, and it's a sizable difference between them and Taunton and Attleboro, for instance. So to add another school at that size didn't really make much sense for them. They wanted to bring somebody in who was more middle of the
middle of the road. Yeah, that makes sense.
So adding Milford, which is basically the same size as OA, Sharon, Stoughton, they're all sort of bunched, North Attleboro, they're all really bunched together in the middle. It sort of balanced the league a little bit.
Now, the other rumor I heard, and I don't know if you heard this, and I run up Brian every now and then, is that eventually they're going to do away with the OCL in the Big Three. Mm-hmm. And one of the rumors I heard was it was possibly going to be called the Big Seven. Okay. And I know, right? So I'm thinking, right, exactly.
Never heard that one before.
Yeah. So and then I heard rumors that they might bring back the Suburban League and throw Bridgewater, Raynham, Brockton in there, New Bedford, maybe Dartmouth, and I know Brian mentioned earlier before we came on about how Barnstable tried to go into the Cape Cod League, New Cape Cod Conference, and never really got established, so they stayed in the OCL. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's.
And I don't know. What's your take on that, or something like that? I know we're touching off a little bit of the Hockomock, but as a sports fan,
I think it would make sense because right now, it doesn't really matter as much in football, but in other sports, the Big Three. How many times have we seen them go 1-1-1 against each other? Now all 3 of them win the league title. All 3 of them make the playoffs, and they're all in the 20th seed or 22nd seed. And And I think it makes more sense for them competitively, and it makes sense for the OCL as well. All those teams. First off, they're all big schools that can play each other, and they're on more or less the same level. They're all rivals anyway, so I think it would make sense to join them. I don't think that Brockton, New Bedford, and Derby are now so elite and so huge that they need to be in their own conference. So.
All right, we're going to step away. When we come back, the Sportsmaster will have a recap of some of the scores we got together for him and a Little League update from the Taunton Little League Championship Series. You are listening to 4 Deep Sports Talk here on the news station, 1320 AM WARA, and online and podcasting live and anywhere, Facebook up and running here at 4deepsportstalk.com. We'll be back with more right after this.
Are you looking?
Today's 4 Deep Sports Talk broadcast is sponsored by Frank Bedeck Law Office. Visit them at bedecklaw.com. By Dr. Scott J. Mandel. Visit them at superiorortho.com. And by Source Pumping Incorporated. Simply the best at what they do. Visit them at sourcepumping.com.
Hey, welcome back. You are listening to 4 Deep Sports Talk here on the news station, 1320 AM WARA, and online, all one word, 4deepsportstalk.com. We are highlighting the Hockomock Sports and Josh Perry, one of the chief editors. Along, Russ is the other guy, right? Ryan. I know it's an I. That was close. But real fast, we're going to queue up, and like every day, every Saturday at the bottom half of the hour, we have the privilege of having the man, the Sportsmaster, give a recap on Friday night scores.
Hi, this is Justin Pereira, the Sportsmaster. Here are the scores from Friday. Football. Women, Henson 9, New Bedford 6, Taunton 27, Durfee 7, Xavier 28, Bridgewater Anthem 12, Hoyle Cassidy 31, Bristol Plymouth 0, Brockton 22, Natick 20, Case 7, Diamond 0, King Philip 17, Foxborough 0, Bishop 23, North Attleboro 13, Attleboro 21, Dartmouth 7, Bishop Stang 27, Cardinal Spellman 20, Silver Lake 28, Oliver Ames 18, Duxbury 35, Situate 23. Also, Taunton Little League Championship Series Game 3, Dodgers won the series 5-2 to capture the 2018 crown. I'm Justin Burr, the Sportsmaster, and that are just some of your scores.
He does a great job. Isn't that awesome?
Great job.
All right, so now, like we talked a little bit off air, I don't know if you had anything, but I was hoping to start breaking down a little bit more insight into the conference on the football side as far as how teams go. And I know you have some of the names that stick out like sore thumbs, just some of the, and they do that. That's why they're good players getting looked out by most likely decent colleges, if not 3, definitely 1, even though they're in the Hawk.
Right.
But I don't care. You pick a school, sir. You let us know, and we're going to try to follow along.
Sure. Well, we released our football players to watch the first week of September. Obviously, there's one new addition to the league this year that has drawn quite a bit of publicity. Kevin Pine, who's a offensive lineman, came over from Millis this year. He's probably the most heavily recruited player in New England right now. He's gotten D1 offers. We like to say he's gotten D1 offers from pretty much everybody but Alabama at this point. He's always on Twitter showing photos of, there he is with John Harbaugh, there he is with the Notre Dame coaches, there he is with them. So he's obviously a major player to watch because he's got 1 year in the league, and he's going to be going somewhere big to play D1 football next year, which is really a huge accomplishment. And he's about 6'8", 280, so he's actually a huge kid as well. Wow. I got to see him last night, and I had a great photo of him trying to block somebody from Franklin, and I apologize to, I don't actually know his name off the top of my head, 73 on Franklin, because the size difference was pretty considerable in, in the photo. But, obviously he's a player to watch. But there's going to be some big matchups for him as well, because last week against Attleboro, he had to play against Nick Evans, who's also getting some D1 looks as a defensive end from Attleboro. He's another big kid, about 6'4", 250. Attleboro's defensive line, I think, averages about 6'4", 250 right now, so they're a bunch of big kids. Ryan Clemente is another one from North Attleboro, plays offensive and defensive line. That should be a fun matchup when Milford plays North Attleboro, because Clemente's going to Sacred Heart, so he's another D1 kid. So, on the offensive side of the ball, Justin Cody, Attleboro, they graduated their quarterback and their top wide receiver from last year, so he's really their go-to back, and he's a really dynamic player. John Hagan is the quarterback from Canton. Canton had a lot of young kids on the team last year, a lot of sophomores. He's a junior quarterback, also a star hockey player, and he's a kid to really watch this year, because Canton could be a team that could sneak up on some people. You were asking about teams that might surprise some people. Canton's a team that has a lot of potential. They still have a pretty young roster, but they're a team that could go somewhere. And if Hagan comes out and plays like he can, they have a shot. They have a real shot. Noah Leonard from Taunton, we mentioned Taunton being 2-0, threw another couple of touchdowns last night against Durfee. I think he's got 3 now in the season. And that combination between him and Braden Merrill seems like it's really potent for the Tigers. And he's a senior, 3rd year under Brad Sidwell in his system. He knows the system really well now, and I think the expectations are much higher for him. And I think for Taunton in general, the expectations are much higher. Somebody I saw last week is Brendan McHugh, a running back from North Attleboro, and Ryan Halliday from King Philip. I think are the two other running backs that are really players to watch this season. They're both dynamic, very different backs. McHugh's much more of a speedster, gets to the edge, and Halliday's more sort of a workhorse back, if you allow that word, if that's okay to call him that, because he gets I think 27 carries against North Attleboro. But offensively, those are really some of the players to watch, and obviously there's a couple of that that will develop over the course of the season. And one player that we really miss is Anthony Burks, the running back from Oliver Ames, towards ACL, so he's going to be out for the season. We found that out when we were doing our previews, and that's a real big loss, because I thought he was actually in the running for MVP this year. Hopefully, I don't know when it happens, so hopefully he'll be back for wrestling, because he's also a good wrestler as well. But you hate to see that, because he's a senior. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, KP as a whole, pretty much their entire defense should be on this list. But Jack Webster's their captain, outside linebacker, does a lot for them. Max Armour's on the middle. I mentioned their names earlier. Derek Casado as a cornerback. But Brian Lee just won his 100th game as KP coach, and that program went from being sort of an afterthought in the league for a number of years. They've had blips here or there where they were really good, but now they are a perennial power, and he's done such a great job with that team. And it's because of the defense first. So basically, anybody on the defense of KP should be on our watch list. The secondary from Franklin last night was really impressive. Players like Jack Nally and Ryan Driscoll. Mentioned Nick Evans, and then Vinny Holmes from Mansfield. He's a junior linebacker. He set the program's record for tackles in a season last year as a sophomore. So obviously he's a major player to watch coming into this year, because that's a program of a lot of years of success. To have a sophomore step in and set a record is really impressive. So those are just some of the players to keep an eye on this year. There's a lot in the league. We've got a lot of teams that have some potential to make a charge in the playoffs this year. So there's a lot of guys to keep an eye on.
Yeah, those are some big players that you mentioned. When I was covering the BR Zavarian game last night, I mean, Zavarian had some kids that were 6'3", 6'4", 280, and I thought they were huge, but they mentioned 6'8". Now, how do you beat a player like that? Do you just pray?
Well, I think in the case of somebody like Pine, you kind of target everybody else on the line. You set somebody up, make him block somebody, and then just send everybody at the rest of the line. And Milford has 4 sophomores on the line with him, so there's a little bit of inexperience next to him. So I think people are sort of targeting that, but it's hard to say, because they Attleboro in the first week that's really being thrown into the fire when it comes to play at the line of scrimmage, because they're a big team. So he really got a baptism by fire in his first Hockomock League game for sure. And Franklin's another good team. So Milford has they face some tough teams to start the season, but he'll go somewhere big. I don't know exactly where he's going yet, but he's definitely going to go somewhere that we get to watch them every Saturday.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times with those players, you know they're Division One caliber. All you're doing is just waiting for that first school to make that offer. And I know sometimes it can be kind of frustrating. I know because I cover Bridgewater Rain. I'm the receiver there, Jeff Ciccio. He's the same boat. He's a Division One caliber player. He's just waiting for that first offer. I know UConn was interested in him, or they're impressed with him. Michigan was impressed with him. But I feel like Harbaugh is just really impressed with anything or anyone at this point.
Well, they've got the local tie now too, because their defensive coordinator is the father of the Franklin baseball coach, Don Brown. So they've also got that local tie. So they're in the area quite a bit. So you're seeing them with a lot of Massachusetts players that are heading out there right now. From Severian actually, he just graduated. Mo Hurst, he's now with the Raiders. So yeah, there's a good local tie.
Absolutely. Now, are there any Hockomock teams that play teams from out of state? I know Brockton tended to play, back in their prime, they played teams from California and Pennsylvania and Maryland, and they used to play Pinkerton Academy in New Hampshire. But are there other teams from the Hockomock that play out of state teams?
The only one that really ever did that was Mansfield. They've traveled to New York, Maryland, traveled quite a distance to play usually the first game of the season. And actually, Mike Redding, the Mansfield coach, had a good quote last night after playing Everett, that Everett really, a public school from Massachusetts, talent-wise, compares with anybody that they've played out of state, including like Bishop Stepinac and all the Archbishop Stepinac. I don't remember. It was a couple of years ago.
Close.
But whatever. Our audience isn't going to worry about that. But they were saying that Everett really compares well with those type of teams. That's the kind of team that they were playing last night. Mansfield's usually our team that if somebody's going to go out of state, it would be them. But this year they just played BC High and Everett, so they just loaded up that way instead. Zavarian's really the other team in the area that does that. And teams from up north play out of state all the time, but that's because teams like Central Catholic are 2 minutes from the New Hampshire border.
Right,
so
you're right there.
Bishop Garrison or somebody like that, Pinkerton, something like that. So, but down in this area in the Hockomock League, it's pretty much only Mansfield.
Yeah, when in the Hockomock, you really don't get much of an opportunity for a out-of-conference schedule. Do you like it, though, when they play teams like Everett or play teams like Zavarian, when they play these, nationally ranked teams?
Right. Yes. Obviously, I would love it if Mansfield and North Attleboro got to play again every year, just like North Attleboro and KP are doing now. I would love to substitute Mansfield for Bishop Ian in North Attleboro's schedule every year, but just because I love that rivalry. And again, we talked about North Attleboro Foxborough. Well, North Attleboro Mansfield, it was those three that dominated the Hawk for decades. And, it always seemed every year one of them would be would be going to the playoffs. And, I'd love to see that rivalry again. But yeah, of course, it's great to get a chance to test yourself against teams outside the league. We know how good our teams are, but it's always good to get them. Mansfield going on the road and beating BC High is great for the whole league because it just raises the level of attention on all the other teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you're playing these teams out of conference here and you're trying to reach ahead, do you feel like that can hurt the team as well? Kind of saying like this game may not necessarily mean all in the world because they're really focused on winning the conference, or do you think they still try to play at the same level as a conference game?
I think you'd have to play at the same level just because the way the playoff setup is now. A team like, for instance, Canton, we mentioned, they've come so close to making the playoffs in several years in a row, and it came down to one game. You really can't even take a non-league game off because these brackets are so loaded at this point that you can't afford to take a day off.
Is it possible? I'm sorry, Don.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead.
Is it possible for a team to get kicked out of the league due to performance?
No, I don't think so.
No. I just had to throw that out.
I would find. I think that if
dropped in another team to replace
kicked out of the league would be tough. I think they would do it.
Term, but,
no, I haven't seen it, and I don't see that being the case. We've had some teams that have had to do some co-ops and things like that, for hockey in particular, but it's not performance based as much as numbers based. So if they don't have enough numbers for a team.
All right, Christian, I know you're ready to pounce at it, but we have to take another break. We're covering Hockomock here with Josh Perry of HockomockSports.com. Don't go anywhere. On the other side of the break, more 4 Deep Sports Talk on the news station, 1320 AM WARA.
National Diversity.
Today's 4 Deep Sports Talk broadcast is sponsored by Frank Bedeck Law Office. Visit them at bedecklaw.com. By Dr. Scott J. Mandel. Visit them at superiorortho.com. And by Source Pumping Incorporated. Simply the best at what they do. Visit them at sourcepumping.com.
All right, welcome back to 4 Deep Sports Talk. We are joined by Josh Perry of HockomockSports.com, covering all things Hockomock. And I know Christian Bracero was ready to pounce on a question. So, Christian, I didn't mean to interrupt you there so rudely, but go right ahead, fire away.
Hey, so Josh, I saw on the website just a lot of links, and like Brian said, everything's like very well designed on this website. I see the polls section. We talked during break, like what exactly that is. I was thinking like an audience feedback kind of session to like just get the audience involved with the league. Fill us in on how maybe ways in the past or currently today how you can get the audience involved with the league.
Sure. Yeah, because we started from scratch. So, we've gone from, just as a couple of metrics, we went from essentially nothing to 4 million page views last year. Over the course of the school year, we have close to 9,000 followers on Twitter, things like that. And, it started from nothing 6 years ago. And the way we built it is, one thing Ryan and I like to talk about is we built it by being professional. Some people like to, try gimmicky stuff like that. And that's not really us. That's not really our personalities. So we've just, by creating good content has been one way that we've been able to really promote the site, but also being out there, letting people know that we're out at the games and people get to see us and got to know us. That's how I think we've gotten the support of the league. And having that support from the league now, where all of the athletic directors know who we are, they want to support us, they want to give us content, they talk to all the coaches and let them know that we're going to be reaching out. And that really drives the audience for us, because having that support from the people within the Hockomock League has really helped boost our profile with fans and players alike. So.
And it works both ways as well.
Right, of course. And I think it's one of those things too, where as people start to know us and they see the content, then it spreads.
Yeah.
So, you really, once you get a couple of people involved, important people, stakeholders within the league, everybody else sort of jumps on board.
So kind of like a street team in a way, kind of
yeah.
Representatives from Hockomock, I guess you could say organization in a way, just kind of go bring them out to the games and just spread the word.
Well, I think one of the things that sets us apart from, I mentioned that almost all the towns have public access facilities covering the games, or they have newspapers that are covering the games. The one thing that really sets us apart is that we're not based on a locality. So all of the papers are covering a town, they're covering one school or a group of schools, but we're covering the league. And there's no other publication out there that's covering the league as a whole. So when you've got a game like, for instance, Franklin Milford, well, that's a bad example actually, because Franklin Milford are both daily news. I'll try to think of an example, but whatever. You have Canton versus Attleboro last Saturday night in boys soccer. The Sun Chronicle may come out and cover it, probably not, because Canton's not in their coverage area. Whereas for us, that's a big game. Those are two good teams that have a shot at winning league titles this year. So it's very different. So we have the league as a whole really looks to us because we're covering everybody, and we're covering it as a league, not covering it as, so and so from this town. Because we're not worried about that. We're worried about it as like a league as a whole.
How about your podcast? We talked during your break. You already mentioned a podcast at the start of the show, pretty much. Tell us your type of schedule. Like, when is it aired?
Sure.
Maybe the website or any social media that is involved with your podcast.
Well, the podcast is part of our Game of the Week coverage.
Okay.
So they can just go to the Game of the Week page on our site, which is right up at the top. There's a tab for them to click on. And that's where all of our Game of the Week coverage resides. So our preview, our picks, everything will be there. The podcast goes up on Thursday. Usually I'm recording it Monday, Tuesday, depending on when everybody's schedule is. Hopefully not Wednesday, because then you start to get a little anxiety about making sure that everybody calls in. But so it'll go up on Thursdays, and we're trying different ways to promote it because it's new. and it's not something that a lot of people know of. So we're trying it. We're seeing how it works, and gotten decent feedback from it so far. But the one good thing is it's right on the Game of the Week page, so people go there all throughout the week. We're updating that all the time. So.
And lastly, on my end at least, more of a career question because I like to write at times just to myself. I don't really like publicize it as I should, but I like sports. And when it comes to sports writing, I know you're a sports writer, right? How do you get yourself noticed? Like, what? I don't know if there's any advice. Like,
no, it's a very good.
Like, how you really reach out to local newspaper companies, local towns to get your work noticed out there?
Well, I think that's just it. You have to reach out. You have to be proactive in sending your resume and sending your work to local papers and trying to get. That's how I got started. I wrote for the Fall River Herald for about a month, but I was like 21 and didn't realize that this was a lot of work and didn't want to do that at the time. So that didn't work at first, but then Middleborough Gazette, I was writing for them for a little while. I've written for, obviously, Hawk Sports. I wrote for Patch. I wrote for Hometown Weekly, ESPN Boston. You kind of have to go New England Soccer Journal, Boston Lax. You have to go where they'll take you, and it's a hustle. It's a hard industry to get your foot in, but there's openings out there for freelance work. The problem is that you're probably gonna have to freelance for a little while. You're gonna have to do the hustle of trying to get to games as many as you can and get your work out there in order to get that gig. The good thing is you're young, so you've got the time and the potential to get that job that you're looking for. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just keep reaching out, get your name out there, and let people know that you're looking.
Yeah, I think that the big thing here, when I was writing, you have to be willing to cover the sports you don't necessarily not want to cover, but you're not the most strongest at covering. I know I work for the Bears Sports Network, and I broadcast Bridgewater State athletics, and we always have before every game. It's like, all right, who wants to announce this game? And it's just crickets. It's like, all right, I guess I'll do it. I'll do play-by-play for field hockey. I've never done it before, but whatever. So I think Christian answer to add on to what Josh was saying, you have to be willing to go to places and cover sports you're not 100% comfortable with, because you're not going to go right out of college. All right, I'm going to be Monday Night Football's play-by-play announcer.
When you're covering Derby, New Bedford swimming for your first ever sport, and you're writing 100 meters when no, they don't swim 100 meters in high school. When I was 20, I had no idea, and now it's 100 yards. And so yeah, I didn't know anything about it. They were just like, well, we need somebody to be there. So I walked in and I'm sitting in the back row. I don't even know what's going on. I've never been to a swim meet in my life. This isn't the Olympics. I don't know what's happening.
Isn't it?
So yeah.
I think that's the best. I'm covering BCC soccer.
Okay.
They start today, and I'm going to be out there with the camera, and I'm just going to follow the ball.
And that's the thing I've done. I worked here for a while. I was volunteering here, and then I got a job as a sports producer. Cable access is a great way to get into the business as well, especially because now they're doing a lot of different multimedia aspects to it. It's not just the TV portion.
FaceTiming.
I actually worked with BCC for a little while with Eric Navarro State. I was doing some filming for them and trying to do. Honestly, I did anybody who would pay me anything, I went to it. And there were a lot of volunteer opportunities. Hockomock Sports has been, a volunteer thing really for Ryan and I for the majority of the 6 years. We have a couple of advertisers, but it's essentially been a volunteer thing. Again, for the majority of it, sold some photos, and that's how we were making some money to make it worthwhile. Also writing for ESPN Boston and all these other places on the side, it's a lot helped. But I think if you're going to get into a career on this, just be prepared. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's hard, but it's good. It's good work. It's fun work.
Now, going back to your podcast, have you ever tried filming it live?
It's hard because we don't have I'm doing it over Google Voice. So, it would be hard because I would have to film two different. Yeah, I'm just taking phone calls. So it would just be me pacing in my room as I took the phone call. It wouldn't really be exciting television. So.
Now, I know this whole time we've been covering football, and we're trying to get to other fall sports, but we're probably gonna have to bring you.
That's how it goes in the fall.
We're probably gonna have to bring you in for more stuff, but we'll talk a little bit about the soccer here. I know I'm more comfortable with the girls' soccer side. King Philip and Franklin, of course, at the top of the Hawk, just like I figure they're going to be every year. I think.
And Mansfield.
Yeah, I think was it 3 years ago maybe King Philip won the state championship undefeated.
Well, KP last year they won the South title. That's as far as we've had. We haven't had a state champion in girls soccer since Franklin won it. God, 2012.
Yeah, that's. Oh, did I say Cape? I think I meant to say Franklin.
Yeah,
but I think
Franklin
that
went to 3 straight sectional finals. It may have been 4, but I think it was 3. And they won a state title. They went undefeated that year. Christy Kirksey was phenomenal, and they had a whole group of freshmen that played as well. So they were pretty well set for the next 4 years. They were really dominant. I think that freshman class that won the state title there as freshmen, I think they lost maybe 4 games their entire high school careers.
that's pretty good.
Yeah,
average,
Yeah, so it's okay. And then it really deeply on the Hockomock for girls soccer is very strong.
Now, I think I also saw this was King Philip also nationally ranked coming in this year.
Probably.
Their girls soccer team. Now, talk to me about the soccer programs that you have here. I know you mentioned Franklin, KP, Mansfield.
Yeah.
Now Dom's telling me to pay attention to things here. Talk to me about how well the soccer programs have been in the Hawk.
Oh, they're great. The Hawk is very deep, especially on the girls' side in terms of the depth of the league and competing for titles every year. The boys' side is very deep as well, but it's tough because boys' soccer is very deep in the state. So.
All right, so judging by the crickets here, so there's a question I did have for you about winter sports, and it's been bugging me. What is it about Mansfield basketball that they always produce studs in that sport? Is it the coaching? Is it something in the water? What is it about Mansfield boys basketball where they just produce elite players?
Since Mass Premier's an advertiser on this, I have to say this. It's definitely the coaching. No, it is the coaching. I mean, and it's the youth. It's the building it up from the youth. They play that system from a young age on, so they're ready to go once they get to high school.
All right, Josh, thank you very much. It was good to finally see you. Last year I didn't have the privilege, but like Brian said, I would definitely like to get a recap of boys and girls soccer if we can, and go from there. So, for Lucy Cabral, Brian Barad, the sports master Justin Ferreira, main man in the corner, Max, who will be helping us with editing this show, and of course Alex Mayo doing all the stuff on Facebook Live, and our special journalist Christian Bracero. I'm Dominic Damiano. We hope you enjoyed this hour of 4 Deep Sports Talk as we covered Hockomock sports, the Hockomock Confernce with Josh Perry. We will catch you next time. Everyone have a fantastic weekend.